People who left their partner the day of the wedding. What happened? A colleague of my husband's texted him about a week before the wedding saying something cryptic like, "If I'm in Key West on Friday, the wedding isn't happening." So he was clearly having thoughts prior to. But social media showed that the rehearsal dinner happened the night before the wedding and he was there, so we figured he'd gotten over it. We had family in town and weren't planning on attending the wedding anyway, but my husband texted a congratulatory message later on the day of. Guy replied from Key West. He did not show for the ceremony. His excuse was that she wouldn't sign the prenup. The reality was he was already seeing someone else. Next story. My friend did this like 20-some years ago. She was engaged to a guy from a very well-off family. The wedding was in California, but they were living in Seattle. Very posh, very expensive. But the mother-in-law was always a female dog to her. Right at the beginning of the reception, the mother-in-law came up and said some nasty things to her in a whisper, thinking she would just take it again. She lost it. Families got involved, and she ended up on a plane back to PNW that night. Her family had already started moving her things out of the apartment that evening. Never spoke to him again. Next story. My brother went to this engagement party. Everything was great, nothing out of the ordinary. Wedding comes around 3 months later. He shows up, and it's a totally different bride. Same groom, same date, same invite, just new bride. No explanation. Now, how in the world are you getting away with that with no explanation? Absolutely not. If I'm at that wedding, you are telling me what happened. You think a room full of people are just not going to notice that's not the woman on the invitation? Surely not. Next story. My cousin Shay did this. There was a sitting area out of the way / out of sight behind a grove of trees at the wedding venue. Her and the bridal party and photographer decided to take the stone path that led behind and around it for some pretty photos. They all walked around the corner to the groom getting serviced from the best man right as he popped off. They didn't notice the group of people standing there in shocked horror because they were a ways down. She kicked him and his family / friends out, and we still had a party afterwards. She met her now husband at the reception. He was the DJ. According to him, banging at weddings where the person isn't the future spouse is more common than people realize. Next story. A friend of mine went to a coworker's wedding. The groom was a little late to the wedding portion and had gotten dropped off right at the church steps. They go through with the wedding, for some reason, and then everyone goes to the reception next door. About 5 minutes into the reception, the bride and groom are just screaming at each other. A big blow-up. A lot of, "Well, you cheated on me with so-and-so." "Yeah, but I only cheated on you with so-and-so because you cheated on me with a different so-and-so," etc. The final line was, "But I can't believe you had so-and-so drop you off at my wedding," which is when the guests start to piece it together that Buddy was late to his wedding because he was with the girl he was cheating with, and she had dropped him off at the wedding late because they were busy screwing at her place beforehand. So, the reception abruptly ends, the new bride gets taken away by the best man, who my friend found out later was one of the multiple guys she had cheated on her new husband with, and the groom storms away to be picked up by the girl he was cheating with. Like, what in the ever-loving crap were they doing even going through with any of this? So there my friend was with his +1 at a wedding reception with no bride and no groom. The food hadn't even been brought out yet. No one knew what to do, so they just sort of sat there and had an awkward dinner party. 4 to 6 months later, they were back together apparently. Oh, I was so close to saying, "Oh, well, good thing they blew it up early at least. It could be a lot worse if they stayed together." And then the final line. Right at the end, snuck in there, they got back together. I, for one, can't think of any ways this goes wrong. Next story. My sister-in-law called off her wedding a month and a half out because she was going through a deep depression. It was so tough, but her fiancé understood that it wasn't because she didn't want to marry him, it's just that she couldn't find any joy in life at that stage, and it was the wrong time to get married. They're still together, and now have 2 kids, and are very content with life. Next story. I have a worse version of this. Had a family member get married, and they got pregnant afterwards. Seemed all good. The day of the birth, the dude decided he didn't want to be a father, and left to never be seen again. Never even saw the kid. Next story. My wife's family has a story from the early 1900s, in which a bride and groom had courted mostly by mail. The day of the wedding, bride got cold feet. The family was trying to figure out what to do when the bride's sister piped up and said, "I'll marry him." The groom thought about it for a few minutes and decided, hey, he was in. The wedding proceeded as if nothing had happened, and they allegedly were married 50 plus years and produced a big, happy family. Next story. I don't know if this counts, but 6 years ago in March, my fiance and I decided to postpone our wedding. The weekend the wedding would have been, he left me home alone to go spend the weekend with his parents. We lived an hour away from our parents. Didn't have cell phone service, no Wi-Fi or landline. His parents posted all over Facebook that they were celebrating him not getting married to me and were celebrating his, quote, new girlfriend. A friend of ours he constantly told me not to worry about. My mom screenshot all the Facebook posts, drove an hour out to where I was and said, "Hey sister, what are we gonna do here?" I took a hot shower and cried. Then we packed all my stuff up and left him a letter on the dining room table with the ring. Later, he texted me asking, "Is this what you really want?" I replied saying no, but it's what I need. Okay, so, OP, when you say you postponed the wedding, I kind of assumed you were gonna do it at some point and it was like, oh, it's not the right time in our lives for this or whatever. Not whatever the hell this is. Why do people like this even propose in the first place? What's wrong with them, man? I'm assuming the dude proposed. Anyway, OP, if you're not with him, and by God, I hope you're not, you're better off. Next story. Obligatory, not me, but bride's best friend decided the wedding was the perfect time to announce that the bride was secretly pregnant. Problem is, groom was religious and had been saving himself for marriage. Bride agreed to it. They had not banged. Turns out she had been cheating for most of the relationship because of this. I believe she planned on waiting until after they banged and telling him the child was his. Turned into an interesting situation where the groom's parents were very upset, thinking he broke his promise of abstinence to them. Bride's parents were celebrating the pregnancy. Bride and groom both had looks of absolute horror. Next story. Not me, but I was the best man. Incredibly weird vibes from the very religious family of the bride the whole time. My friend, the groom, is Muslim and black. Her family was always nice to him, but would say crap like, "Well, with whoever you end up marrying," to her in front of his face even after they were engaged. She literally just never showed up. Neither did her entire family, and they never RSVP'd either. They haven't spoken a word to each other to this day. She married some blonde dude within 6 months and lives in, drumroll please, rural Alabama. Next story. Not the day of, but my mom's first marriage lasted 13 days. He was mentally unstable, locked her up in the apartment, and beat her. She was eventually able to get his mother to rescue her and take her to a shelter. Next story. My dad left his bride at the altar. It wasn't my mom, it was years before. From what he told me, the relationship was quite toxic, and it got worse during the wedding preparation. My dad apparently warned her that he was very close to calling everything off. She told him he didn't have the guts to do it. So when the civil agent asked him if he was willing to take the lady as a spouse, he said no. She, rightfully so, I would say, was enraged, and her family tried to beat up my dad, who swiftly left with his best friend. They still got married a few months later on, but got divorced pretty quickly. What do you mean you went back, man? You were out. You were free. You made the decision. You broke the chains. And then you're right back in it. By the way, to be super clear, I'm not talking about marriage in general. Breaking the chains, I'm just saying like of a toxic relationship. That's all. I swear I'm not one of those dudes who's like, oh, you know, the old ball and chain. That's not me. That's not me. Next story. Not me, but my best friend. I was set to be his best man at his wedding. While I was organizing his bachelor party, I reached out to some of our old friends to invite them. One of them who showed up, we hadn't really seen in like 10 years, and they asked who he was getting married to, and I told him. He was silent for a minute and said, "Bro, I literally just hooked up with her a couple weeks ago." I thought it was a joke, but he sent me a pic. Hardest freaking conversation I've ever had to have, and it was only like 12 hours to the wedding. Next story. I know of someone who left from the honeymoon. They were in Italy and something happened. She was apparently very scared and slept with her passport hidden under the pillow so he wouldn't take it from her. That was more than 20 years ago and she's moved on. I never did find out what had happened since then. I moved away and lost touch. Next story. My sister's wedding happened 2 weeks before the wedding. During his bachelor party, she flew to a different state to get closure from an ex. The groom wasn't much better, though. He disappeared during the bachelor party and was found trying to hook up with girls and do drugs as one last hurrah before getting married. My boyfriend at the time was part of the bachelor party, and he told me when they went back to the hotel room to look for the groom, they found evidence of an escort and drugs. The groom was skipping everywhere and getting turned down left and right, so I guess he figured he's got to get what he can get. After everything was found out, my mom tried convincing my sister to still do the wedding and just get couples counseling. Obviously, that did not go over well. My dad figured he paid for the venue and caterer, so we still had a party at the venue. We just didn't invite my sister. My boyfriend, who is now my husband, called it the non-wedding when referencing it. Actually so fun. They dated for 4 years and were engaged for 2, so 6 years total. Less than a year later, he married a girl who he was cheating on my sister with during the entire time they were engaged. Gave the girl the same engagement ring my sister wore for 2 years. Tacky, in my opinion. My sister ended up marrying the ex she flew to a different state for. Well, obviously, they were not good for each other. This is probably for the best, honestly. The whole getting married to your ex that you were hung up on, obviously, not great. There's a bit of judgment from me, I'm not gonna lie. But, happy ending, I guess. Next story. I should have left the day of the wedding, but I did it 40 hours later. I'll spare you the long story, but the short of it is that my ex was emotionally and physically abusive the 6 months leading up to the wedding day. We had eloped a year prior and planned a wedding party to celebrate on the 1-year anniversary. My ex got turbo wasted at the rehearsal dinner, refused to come home initially, and when he did finally come home, I was having an anxiety attack and he sneered. Just said, "Just go to the hospital then." He did a line and went back out with his friends to a club. He came back at 3 a.m. and started yelling at me for almost an hour as I was in bed shaking and crying, begging him to let me sleep. He kept ripping the covers off, telling me what a horrible person I was. I just dissociated the day of the wedding. I was too embarrassed to call off the ceremony. The day after the wedding, he did the same thing. And Monday morning, I packed up my dog and my valuables and left. Edit to add. My ex had hired pole dancers dressed as unicorns to perform at our wedding reception, and he had spent about $800 on coke this previous month. This was not a regular thing. He did it maybe once in the 3.5 years we were dating. Then he had the audacity to say he couldn't afford to buy me a ring. Next story. I should have left, but didn't. He chose to not spend our wedding night with me, as he cared more about doing drugs with his friends and staying out till 5 a.m. I was 2 years sober at the time, so I went to bed sober and alone, not even knowing where my now husband was. I thought in the moment he just wanted to be social with people he hadn't seen in a while. But a couple of years later, and I've learned I was just never a priority to him. Divorce is hopefully being finalized soon. Okay, if someone I'm friends with gets married and then asks me to, hang out or go out that night? Hell no. Are you kidding me? I'm not going anywhere with your sorry butt, dude. Go to your wife. What is wrong with you? Next story. A friend and coworker. His family are from Europe and own some estates. She's from Kentucky. Families fly in from around the world to this island estate. A week of celebrations. They get married by the family's priest in the family's church. Big reception. His family had to have spent $1 million. At the end of the reception, they fly out to Spain for the first stop of the honeymoon. The next morning, he goes out onto the balcony and whistles to the flower man in the plaza to bring some flowers up. He shouts out the room number and jumps in the shower. She, not understanding, goes out and sees 3 women walking across the plaza. She thinks he whistled at the women and gave the room number. She packs her bags, storms out, and leaves him in the hotel. He comes out of the shower to find her gone and the flower guy asking for money. He pays the guy and assumes she's getting something from the front desk. He realizes a half hour later his phone is missing, and so is her luggage. He calls his brother to call his phone and then to call her. She ignores the calls. He eventually gets her mom on the phone and she cusses him out for whistling at the girls. He tries to explain and the mom calls him a cheater. He never sees her again. No divorce because the marriage certificate wasn't filed. She keeps the rings, including his grandmother's diamond. She posts the pictures on her social media of the wedding, but when he got back to the US, she was moved out of the shared housing and gone. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. They were married for less than 18 hours. They were in lawsuits over those wedding and engagement rings for 2 years. Next story. I knew of a girl who did this, but she didn't leave in the way you'd think. This was a South Asian wedding, so multiple events spread throughout the day. The day of the first event, they had a gathering planned at the bride's place. The bride's younger sister needed to be picked up from school, and since no one was available, the bride herself went to pick her up. On their way back, they got into an accident and both passed away. It was painful and sucked for everyone. Next story. So this happened to a friend of mine. You know, the sort of friend where you really like the person but aren't that close. Basically, I was unable to make it to her wedding and just wanted to congratulate her afterwards. Long story short, her wedding party returned the night of her wedding because the groom's party, read parents, were demanding more dowry. Both the bride and the groom were doctors. She and her family were glad they showed their true colors before the wedding. Dowry deaths are very common in our country. She's married now and has a cutie patootie daughter. Edit. Dowry deaths are basically many brides have been burned to death after their marriage. It mostly happens when the groom's side basically believes their son could command a better dowry, so they see it as an easy way to get rid of the bride and get their sons remarried. It was so common in India in the 80s that the government had to come up with a law that any married female dying of unnatural causes before completing 10 years of marriage will be investigated as a dowry death. Many times, brides are tortured to bring more money from their parents even after the marriage. Also, to add a bit of cultural context, even though dowry is a Hindu religion tradition, the above-stated friend is a Muslim. Also, a Catholic friend's marriage got dissolved over dowry. Ours is a sad country united by misogyny. Look, I know better than to, say some inflammatory stuff here. So all I'll say is it is objectively disgusting that these sorts of social contracts, marriages, can be seen as a way just to make money, basically. Just gross, man. And I will at least say the whole dowry thing I never understood. Next story. I almost did this. 2 days before the wedding, as my bridesmaids were flying into town, my fiancé left his wallet at home. I'd never snooped, but I opened it up. The first thing I saw was a bright yellow letter from his former wife. It was from when he was deployed. They had a kid together, but there was zero mention of the kid in the letter. Granted, I only skimmed it, but the gist of it was that she knew he loved getting letters, so she was so great for sending him one. I was pretty upset that it was important enough for him to carry around every day. It would be a different story if it were in a drawer or a box, but to have it in your wallet on your person all the time, it stung. Also, I would frequently write little notes about what he means to me and hide them places. So her letter being in there and none of mine was also pretty sucky. He's a pretty quiet person and had nothing to say when I asked him about it. I figured I could go along with the wedding weekend and then not mail in the certificate. He knocked his vows out of the park. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience at all. He even got down on one knee to my daughter and said vows to her and gave her custom-made earrings. The wedding weekend was an absolute blast and he seemed really happy to be marrying me. So I figured I could forgive him. It was a time in his life that I couldn't relate to, but we had a wonderful blended family now and could move forward. I mailed the certificate in. We will be married for 10 years this summer. There's been some bumps, mostly that first year, but I've been very happy the last 4.5. And I'm so glad that we're together. OP, this is a very sweet story, and I'm glad everything's working out. But I'm also a little annoyed we didn't get any context around why he was carrying it with him. Like, surely it has something to do with the fact he got it while deployed. It has some sort of connection there. It must. But now I'm just left wondering, man. Next story. We dated 4 years. We're 2 weeks away from closing on a custom house together and a month from getting married. We'd been in counseling the entire time we were together for his childhood trauma and intimacy issues. I just finally realized in one of those sessions that this was never going to change. I thought I could hang, but he wouldn't sleep with me. He wouldn't tell me I was beautiful or invest in my life. I authored a book for a college course I wrote, and he didn't even know what it was about, though I wrote it while we were together. Anyway, it was one of the 2 best decisions I've ever made in my 34-year life so far, walking away from him and the house. It cost me $23,000, and it was worth every penny. TLDR, I walked away pretty much last minute, and it was the best decision I've ever made. Next story. I didn't leave, but I should have. My best friend and maid of honor asked everyone to leave the room and give us a private moment. She told me if I wanted to leave, she had her car outside. and she would make sure I was okay afterward. I declined, and a few hours later walked down the aisle toward my dear friend, but with whom I wasn't in love. We were married for 4 years, had a really decent marriage, healed a lot of trauma unrelated to him, but when I finally left, it hurt him quite a lot. It was very selfish of me to marry him. I think he's much happier now, remarried to someone who seems much more suited to him. Next story. Unfortunately, the one I know of is the day after the wedding. Huge, beautiful wedding, 250-plus guests, mid-20s college sweethearts. Parents were in the same social circle in their southern town. They were religious, so it was a big deal that they waited. On their honeymoon flight the next day, the groom turned to the bride, my older cousin, and said, "This was a mistake," then completely shut down and didn't talk to her. They landed in Tahiti, she flew back on the next flight home, and the story goes he stayed in their honeymoon suite and banged a bunch of different women. I didn't verify this personally, but you know how family rumors go around. Then a month later he came crawling back, but she was too humiliated. She had spent the last month returning wedding gifts and writing thank you notes and dealing with the fallout, all while he partied. He wasn't ready, felt pressured, that sort of thing. They got an annulment, and now apparently it's super awkward at alumni events. She is now married for 3 beautiful kids, so I guess he made room for the right person in her life. You never know what goes on behind closed doors. What looks perfect from the outside can be totally different for the people in the relationship. This is going to make me sound so old, but I swear, these days, this is just going to become more and more common. Like the insane pressure to keep up this appearance, I feel like it's never been this intense for the average person. Everyone who has social media has an image to maintain, so stuff just bubbles up behind closed doors and it goes on maybe longer than it should. And I'll be honest, I think I have a little bit of sympathy for the guy. OP seems very much on the woman's side of things, which is fair. I think that if we were assigning fault, she's less at fault, for sure, by a lot. A lot. But I guarantee this dude did not really want to get married in the first place. There was probably huge social pressure from the just family/religious climate. He should have realized that earlier, yes. He probably shouldn't have banged a bunch of different people in their honeymoon suite. Also, yes. But it's hard to figure out what you really want until you're in the thick of it, especially when everyone's telling you that you should want something. So I have sympathy for the situation. I do also think the dude handled this terribly and is a bit of a jerk. Next story. In my country town, a guy I knew was to be best man at a wedding. On the wedding morning, Lyndon went out to the farm where the groom was working. The groom sat down and started eating his packed lunch. Lyndon said to him, "You haven't got time to be eating. We have to get ready for the wedding." The guy said, "I'm not getting married. I never asked her to marry me. She arranged it all, told me the date and to get a suit ready." The woman turned up to the church and had her car keep driving around the streets while waiting for the groom to arrive. This was in the 80s before mobile phones. I don't know how she found out he wasn't coming. Everyone in the town knew about it before nightfall. Next story. A friend of mine very much believes in signs from heaven. She went to church a week or so before the wedding to pray for a good, strong marriage. As she was praying, the church got darker because a cloud passed over the sun, so less light came through the windows. She saw it as a sign and called off the wedding and cut the guy off, telling him it was over. Everyone on her side was supportive of her choice but laughed at the reason. Within a year, it comes out that he was hiding a gambling addiction and loads of debt. He forged her name on some fake loan contracts saying she owed him and tried to collect from her family, saying her debt is their debt after she wouldn't give him the time of day. Oh, I was so ready to laugh at her, to be like, oh, what a stupid reason. That's crazy. Oh, you know what, girl? Maybe you were onto something. Next story. Not the day of, but a girl I worked with got married in a big church wedding and they left for their honeymoon in Hawaii. He beat the crap out of her one night. She got away and called her dad, who immediately got on the first flight to Hawaii, got her home safely, and she got an annulment. Next story. Boy, do I have a story. My good friend had a wedding. She and her boyfriend had been together for about 9 years. Their relationship, however, was mostly a matter of convenience. They didn't really have anything in common. The day of, she was panicking, saying she didn't want to go through with this. Everyone told her, "You were just nervous for the big day." So they had the wedding. Everything seemed normal, but pretty much the day after, she realized she did not want to be with him anymore. So they never mailed their marriage documentation and figured they never got married. A couple months later, he moves on, they part ways. A year or so goes by. The boyfriend gets a new girlfriend and they want to get married. My friend then gets a text from him saying, "Hey, so it turns out someone else, the marriage officiant maybe, mailed the documentation, so we are in fact married." This happened in 2019 and she just last month now technically divorced him, which is hilarious because she's been dating someone for 2 years and is pregnant with his kid. So I always joke about her getting knocked up by someone who isn't legally her husband. Next story. 14 years together, 14 days married. She fell in love with a coworker and wanted to explore her sexuality. We started dating too soon. 14-year-olds, both of us. We were happy and enjoyed it a lot while it lasted. She looks happy now too. Still miss her though. Next story. Not the day of, but a couple of days after. 2 days after my wedding, when all the wedding guests went home, my partner went MIA. Couldn't locate him for a solid 24 hours. Come to find out he did an all-night ayahuasca ceremony with his yoga instructor that he was also banging. He walked in the door after being missing all day and said, "I don't love you anymore." That same day, I found boxes of her stuff in our garage. He was already planning on moving her into our house. Why he let me go through with the wedding, I'll never know. It was really hard on me and my family, who flew out for the wedding. They got married a couple of months later. It had been going on for a while. They're divorced now, so there's that at least. Next story. Wasn't day of, but close enough that the church and priest had been picked, venue for the reception had been picked, and all of the printing, invitations, etc. was done. Finally had a talk with myself and decided, nope, I'm out. I was polite about everything, especially with her family. They weren't really surprised. Called her father, told him I'd pay for the printing, told my parents, etc. One of the best decisions I've ever made. Next story. A friend's story that has always stuck with me. Happened in the early 70s. In LA, he gave a ride to 2 girls hitchhiking, struck up a friendship with them, went through the whole thing of dating, and she moved in with him after a year. Planned the wedding and his family from Detroit came. Everything is happening as planned. Both families and friends are all seated, the procession is complete, and the wedding march song starts. The church doors don't open. After some awkward moments, the door opens, and it's only her father standing there saying, "Sorry, she had to use the bathroom. It'll be a minute." After enough time, her mother goes to check on her. She is nowhere to be found, but they did find her wedding dress at their apartment. He was devastated. He said he sat there on the altar steps waiting. When he learned of the dress, he and his best man went on the honeymoon. Stayed drunk the entire time. By the time he returned, all her stuff was moved out. No note, no communications, nothing. Just totally split. 18 months later, she shows up at his doorstep crying, apologizing, asking him to marry her. He said closing that door in her face without saying a word was a great moment in his life. By that time, he didn't care and had moved on. He was such a great guy and lived a full life with quite a few massive twists, like being left at the altar. He was a Navy SEAL, woke up in a body bag in Vietnam because they thought he was dead. After recovery, he was home stateside and driving to his first day at a job after service. It was a stonework place and he would be polishing marble. In the parking lot, he just couldn't get out of the car. Went back home and his mom said a friend had just called. His friend's band had just signed with Motown, and they wanted him to join them in LA. He was a backup and harmony singer for Rare Earth, 70s band, known for Get Ready and I Just Want to Celebrate. First white guy rock band signed with Motown. He was a good friend. We had fun and did some business together. I still miss him. All right, everyone. Everyone in this thread and everyone listening, I want you to learn when they show up months later crying, begging for you to take them back, say no. Say it with me. Say no. This guy seems to be a ton better for it. Next story. Sorta related. My sister is bossy, boorish, and super domineering. She was going to marry a very quiet, sorta docile military guy. His only ask for the wedding was that she get her tramp stamp with her ex-boyfriend's name removed before it. She was clearly playing a game of chicken with him by putting it off and putting it off. I was sure she was going to railroad his wishes, but then I learned he'd fully left his previous fiancée at the altar. My sister knew this. At a family dinner, the night before the wedding, he just said, "Well, you only have like 16 hours to get that tattoo removed," and promptly changed the subject. Not gonna lie, it was really fun to see her walking down the aisle with all that lace scratching against her freshly lasered backside. Okay, so in my mind, call me a prude, old-fashioned maybe. I simply think this should have been done earlier, like before proposing maybe. Surely you're a year or so into the relationship and think, so this tattoo, this tramp stamp I got of my ex's name, I should probably, deal with that. Next story. Not me, but a good friend. She went through the ceremony, then confessed that she slept with the best man the night before. Marriage got annulled. She's been married to the best man for 27 years and they're still madly in love. Feel bad for the guy she married, but nice, it worked out. Next story. Not day of the wedding, but cousin called off their wedding. We just got an email about a month before the wedding that it was on pause. My cousin was going through some issues. He was later diagnosed with MS and Parkinson, but by the date the wedding was supposed to take place, his ex-fiancé had shown up as a match for me on a dating website. Next story. My sister was left the day before the wedding. He just got cold feet. She was devastated. She married a terrific guy. They have 2 wonderful kids, a beautiful home, and both kids are out on their own with lovely lives now. The other guy did literally nothing with his life. Next story. Not quite at the altar, but close. Over 50 years ago, my mother-in-law was engaged to a wealthy man from a fairly influential family. They were both religious and made the joint decision to wait for marriage. The wedding happens in a massive church in front of hundreds of people, after which they fly immediately to Europe for their honeymoon. It was only after they reached the hotel and were alone in the room together that he told her, "I can't do this. I thought I could, but I'm not in love with you. I'm not attracted to you. I'm gay." And so she took a cab to the airport that same night and waited until a flight home was available. She showed up at her parents' house unexpectedly, told them she was getting an annulment, and refused to say another word about the situation for the entirety of the summer. Eventually the story came out, but she was devastated. She met the love of her life and the best man I've ever known, apart from my husband, about a year later in the pediatric hospital where she worked. Next story. Not my wedding, but my mom was the florist. The bride was kind of an idiot, but her deposit check cleared, so whatever. I was dispatched to deliver the flowers to the groom's side of the wedding party while my mom delivered the bouquets. I got to the venue where they were getting ready, and it's just the best man drinking beer in jeans and a t-shirt. He told me the wedding wasn't happening. Oh no, is everyone okay? I've seen weddings canceled last minute because the father of the bride dropped dead or grandma had a stroke or something. She already has a husband. I left it at that. Told him he could do whatever he wanted with the flowers, but that I had to hold up our end of the contract. When I got back to the shop, my mom, who had the fun job of delivering to the bride's side, filled me in on the gossip from her cousin, who was fielding questions on that end. She'd gotten married in a courthouse right after high school, but decided that since it wasn't in a church and they didn't move in together, it didn't count. Next story. My husband's mom was left at the altar 3 times by the man he thought was his father. The second time it happened, she went to her ex-husband for a night, then went back to the man who left her at the altar and decided to give him a second chance. When my husband was born, she didn't tell anyone that his father could be someone else. Guess what we found out from DNA testing 30 years later? Anyway, back to the main question. The third time she was left at the altar, she broke up with him, and he kicked her and the kids out of the house he had bought from her dad. The one her dad had built with his own hands. My husband, his sister, and their mom were very poor for a few years, but my mother-in-law always made sure they had enough to eat, even if she went hungry. My husband didn't see his dad very often after that, and he actually was shocked that we invited him to our wedding. They talk on the phone once a year or so now. He's a free spirit who can't be tied down to people, and he truly seems like someone who can't empathize with people. He cut off his whole family, and when we visited him for the first time, he left over 9 hours to go on a mountain bike ride the first day we got there, and was very impatient with our young son. So my husband was actually glad this wasn't his biological father in the end. Now my mother-in-law has the best husband for her, a sweet guy who is over the moon in love with her. Thank God she was left at the altar by the man who threw away the boy he thought was his own flesh and blood, and continued to break my mother-in-law's heart until she finally had the strength to leave him. I'm convinced people who leave someone at the altar have no heart or consideration, as that is truly the most dramatic, embarrassing, and heartbreaking, not to mention expensive, way of breaking someone's heart, declaring in front of all their friends and relatives that you, after all that, don't actually think they're good enough. There are so many opportunities before the wedding itself to call it off. There is no reason to jerk around someone like that. Next story. Basically, my friend said something to his future wife that made her angry, something silly, while my friend was taking a bath. She left at the house angry. He chased her trying to reason with her. He didn't even have time to get dressed. Went out completely naked, even with soap and shampoo, down the street. She left in the car. My friend returned home to find out the door was locked. he had to call a locksmith. There, he called everyone to say the marriage was postponed. My friend dodged a tactical missile. 6 months later, he married another man, and this woman assaulted him with a knife for a silly fight. She was in jail, and I lost contact. Next story. Wasn't day of, but my cousin called off her wedding when she found out she was 1. Pregnant, and 2. He was a serious opioid addict and had stolen from her siblings, her parents, and our grandparents. He raided our grandparents' medicine cabinet at Thanksgiving right after my grandfather had a serious surgery. They tried to make it work for the baby for a while, but unsurprisingly, it completely fell apart. Guy ended up in and out of jail for various drug-related offenses, graduated to harder stuff, and is now in federal prison and, unrelatedly, on the registry. Cousin's kid is a fantastic kid, but Jesus, my cousin has terrible judgment. First time I met the guy, I got that hair on the back of your neck fear. Felt like alarm bells were going off in my spine. Next story. Yeah, I'm questioning your cousin's judgment of character, at least a little bit, but all's well that ends well, right? Next story. I tried. I seriously tried. I should have tried harder. This was with my first. She yelled at me the whole night before the wedding. AC went out in our apartment and we had 2 floor fans stacked on top of each other. She lost her cool. How punny. And kicked the fans over at me while throwing a tantrum. Neighbors called the cops, but the cops only checked her for bruises. Didn't even hear my side of the story. When the cops left, she said, "If I wanted you in jail, all I had to say was you hit me." So I slept on the couch that night. No fans either. She took both. Next morning, she left without me to get ready for the wedding. I woke up and said, "Screw this," and went back to sleep. My family later called. I screened their first 50 calls. When I answered, they were screaming at me. I told them, I'm not getting married. I should have left home because, sure enough, they showed up and turned it into a thing. They downplayed the red flags from before. Wedding happened. I look miserable in the photos. She looks like the devil got his crown. That began 7 long years of the same abuse from her. Physical, mental abuse, etc. More incident with the cops. I'm not perfect. Back then, I was a lazy young adult. But really, she never motivated me or supported me. It was put down after put down. Later, when my family heard of the abuse, they were like, "Well, why did you marry her?" Yeah. Edit. We obviously divorced. We both found new people and remarried. I feel bad for that poor guy. I found a great woman who really motivated me. I have kids now, my own house, cars, boat, land in East Oklahoma, etc. Who you're with can really drag you down or build you up. Don't waste your life with a bad person. Next story. My best friend, female, married an airline pilot. The next morning, they left for their honeymoon in Southeast Asia. When they landed in Singapore, she had an email from a woman in Colombia that was engaged to the same guy. He frequently flew to Colombia, so it made sense. The email had a lot of pictures to show as evidence. Apparently, the other woman found out because she saw the wedding photos on social media. It was devastating. She had to disembark and pick up her luggage while crying and fighting with her husband. She called her parents, and they booked her a different hotel and flight back for the next day. To make things worse, she found out she was pregnant 3 weeks later. So now she has to deal with this jerk for the rest of her life. Terrible situation all around. She is beyond lovely. She didn't deserve what happened to her. I sometimes think about how someone's life can so easily be ruined by just picking the wrong partner, even when there are no clear red flags. Next story. My brother backed out the day before. So many red flags. He was in the military at the time and I rarely got to see him. He and I have always been super close. So when we would get to see each other, it was like 2 best friends reuniting after a year apart. That trip for their wedding was the first time I met the bride-to-be. She became weirdly jealous of me, was upset he wanted to hang out with and have me tag along on their random errands leading up to the wedding in the days before. I think that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Broke it off in the middle of the night before. A bunch of family had traveled out of state to be there. We ended up just doing local tourist things and had a good time. I don't think he has any regrets. Can I just say, not meeting your brother's fiancé until they're engaged is a little strange, right? But completely unrelated because, you're his sister. The bride getting jealous of you is So weird. Next story. My sister and her first husband. He left her hanging at the courthouse. When she got in touch with him, he told her he didn't want to be with her. They got back together months later and finally married. They were married for about 6 years until he lost his life in a car accident on his way home from work. Their relationship was always toxic. Next story. I thought I had everything figured out. The career, the city, the woman I loved. But when it came time to marry her, I panicked. I hurt her deeply, something I'll always regret. But love doesn't let go that easily, and neither did I. I fought to earn her trust back, and when she finally took me back, we did it right. Quietly, honestly, just the two of us. Those years we had together were everything. I found peace in the ordinary, cooking with her, sharing music, and riding that damn Peloton. I didn't know the ride would be our last, but if I had to go, I'm glad it was still with her, in our home, in love. Next story. Unless one of the two people getting married is discovered cheating or something like that the day of, there is no reason to bring down someone's world like that. There's no need. Heart will hurt, but the humiliation and money part suck equally. Screw that. My wife was 10 minutes late walking down the aisle. I was like, what the hell? And starting to sweat. It turned out she asked a friend to let her know when she should come out of the room she was waiting in. Her friend forgot and went to sit down. Someone else went and got her, and we got married. The thought she wasn't going to show did cross my mind for a second. Thankfully, all is well 9 years later. Next story. A second cousin of mine, British, was a very quiet, nerdy kind of guy who wasn't very confident. He got a scholarship and went to a college in the US where he met the woman who would go on to become his wife. She was the only woman I know of that he'd ever had a romantic relationship with. Her family was very religious and her dad was some sort of pastor, so they got engaged and married quickly. On the wedding night, she admitted to him that she was a lesbian and that she was in love with her maid of honor and asked if he would be her cover, all because her family would disown her if they found out. She wanted a loveless show marriage. He thought they were in genuine love and was completely blindsided. He annulled the wedding and her family apparently did disown her. It was all spoken about in very hushed tones, with my mom and aunties being all very British and polite about it. As an edgy teenager at the time, I found it quite funny, but looking back, he must have been devastated. This is just a disgusting abuse of someone's trust. They grew a real relationship with you, at least on their end. If you gave him no indication that this was not a real thing and then just led him on until you got married, that's crazy. I get the whole repression and, religious parents wouldn't approve, they'll disown you, but you cannot be doing this to someone. You figure that stuff out on your own first. Or get a willing participant. Ugh. Anyway, that's the last story for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I also hope you don't get left at the altar. I will see you in the next one. Also, P.S., the guy who left a comment saying this is an AI slop content mill or whatever it was, no, we're not. I'm real. I swear, I'm real. I don't get how anyone could mistake me for AI, and honestly, it's kind of worrying. Anyway, bye.